Climate change is no longer unfolding in the background. It is now a major driver of the global food crisis. Heat waves, droughts, floods, and crop failures are disrupting harvests and threatening the livelihoods of millions of people around the world, particularly in the world's most vulnerable regions. As COP30 convenes in the Amazon this year, the question is not just what countries will pledge, but whether the world can chart a new path to safeguard global food security in an era of increasingly extreme climate events. What solutions are emerging, and where is real progress still possible? Now, to help us make sense of both the challenges and the opportunities, we're joined by Richard Choularton, Director of Climate and Resilience at the World Food Program. Richard, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us at this hour. Now, give us
Thanks,
some on-the-ground
so much for having me.
insights. Our pleasure indeed. Give us some on-the-ground insights, please. You're actually there at COP30. What are your key takeaways so far from this year's COP in the Amazon in terms of the priorities being discussed and the overall level of ambition from participating countries?
Here in Belém, the mood is positive and constructive so far. Brazil is calling for accelerated implementation of climate action, calling for the negotiations to move past the discussions on commitments into concrete action around the world to address climate change. The good news is that the global efforts underway to implement the Paris Agreement have slowed the growth of emissions. But the bad news is that those cuts are still far too slow, and the world is on track for 2.6 degrees of global warming, far off the 1.5 degree.
Now, China's climate food systems model is being observed. China has invested heavily in climate-smart agriculture, water-efficient irrigation, digital monitoring systems, and climate-resilient crop varieties, efforts that have strengthened both productivity and food security. Which aspects of China's experience do you believe are relevant or scalable for countries grappling with climate-driven food insecurity?
There are so many things to learn from China's experience and the remarkable progress that China has had in lifting 770 million people out of extreme poverty while sustaining a fifth of the world's population with just 9% of the world's arable land. In fact, China is already sharing its knowledge and innovations with countries around the world in Africa and Asia and Latin America. So, for example, climate-resilient crop varieties. China's invested for decades in developing drought and flood-tolerant rice and wheat and maize. And these technologies have helped stabilize yield even under increasing extreme weather. And they're directly applicable to countries facing similar ecological pressures. Digital agriculture and early warning. It's been really exciting to see here at COP30 the new tools that the China Meteorological Agency has launched, leveraging artificial intelligence for early warning and impact-based forecasting systems. And China's progress on digital agriculture in areas like mobile phone-based farm management have transformed how farmers can protect their crops and manage the risks from the climate. We worked with provincial authorities in Jilin to pilot a holistic risk management approach to combine many of these techniques as well as insurance to save water and fertilizer, increase yields, and those kind of examples can be shared.
Now, looking ahead to the outcome of COP30 in Brazil, in Belém, what concrete breakthroughs do you most like to see, whether in climate finance, technology transfer, adaptation support, or nationally determined contributions that could meaningfully strengthen global resilience?
I think first is truly a fit-for-purpose, accessible and scaled-up climate finance architecture, what's called the Baku to Belém roadmap, which is the plan for mobilizing $1.3 trillion annually by 2035 is essential. So we need to see more pre-arranged finance, so finance for insurance products or anticipatory action or other financing mechanisms that are ready to go when a disaster strikes. And we're looking to try and see 20% of crisis finance be pre-arranged. We also really need to make sure that the full food system is integrated into the climate change negotiations. The food system is critical not only for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but because the food system is one of the critical sectors that can absorb greenhouse gases while feeding the planet and creating livelihoods. It's a priority in the nationally determined contributions or the national commitments that countries are bringing to Belém, and it needs to be front and center in the discussion. And then finally, although the World Food Programme's principal concern is the impact of climate disasters on people, mitigation of climate change is essential. The negotiations here need to find a pathway for us to get to 1.5 degrees so that we avoid the worst consequences of climate change. There have been some really positive signals in that regard, particularly President Xi's announcement of significant emissions reductions, but we need to see more.
Richard, thanks so much for joining us at this hour. Latin America, this year's COP30 host and one of the regions most exposed to extreme weather patterns, from droughts to flooding, threatening both food security and livelihoods. Now, joining us for a closer look at the region is Raphael Leão, Program Policy Officer with the World Food Program in Panama. Raphael, great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, let's talk about COP30 taking place in the Amazon. How is the conference being viewed across Latin America? From your perspective, what themes or challenges stand out the most for the region, especially when it comes to agriculture, livelihoods, and food security?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the invite, for the opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. Greetings from Belém, Brazil. I think, first of all, we all know that COP is a global event, but the fact that it's being organized here in Belém, in Brazil, in the heart of the Amazon, makes it also the COP of the Amazon. So I think really a sense of strong pride, that's what we feel among Latin Americans, and also an understanding that the fact that it's being organized here, it kind of gives more space for the indigenous populations to have voice, to participate in the process. Also, some traditional, often marginalized populations of this region. To your question, I think I would mention three main themes that stand out for this region. One is that really we see extreme weather-related events affecting more and more the most vulnerable populations. So I'm talking about farmers, I'm talking about fishermen, I'm talking about the urban poor. Second is a growing focus on food system. We all know that this region is a major food producer. We often regularly export food for other regions of the world. Still, population of Latin America, a big share of the population face recurrent food insecurity. And I think the third is really a call for justice, emerging from the feeling that those that suffer the impacts of the current climate crisis, those that suffer the most are those that have least contributed for this crisis to take place.
Talking about China, China has expanded cooperation with Latin America in areas such as agriculture, clean energy, sustainable development. From your perspective, where do you see the greatest potential for China and countries in the region to work together to strengthen food security and climate adaptation?
China has this long-standing experience with rural development, with increasing agricultural production and promoting agricultural production based on smallholder farmers. So basically inclusive agricultural production, all these initiatives to reduce poverty. I think these are all examples and great experiences from which Latin American governments, Latin American countries can explore. WFP, we have WFP Center of Excellence in China for over a decade now. And what we do is precisely through our Center of Excellence, we facilitate this technical assistance and exchange of food practices through what we call South-South and triangular cooperation, which is really facilitating this connection between Chinese government and other governments in the global South. And I really think this is how Latin American countries can learn from China. And at the same time, this is an excellent way of China contributing to promoting resilient and sustainable food systems in this region.
Raphael, thank you so much for joining us at this hour.
Thank you, my pleasure.
And that will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching. Our news coverage continues. Bye and take care.